Song for a Whale, Chapter 22. Later that week, I stopped at the bank across the street from school. I'd gone with my mom or dad enough times to know what to do. My parents always showed a driver's license, which, of course, I didn't have, so I brought a copy of my birth certificate from mom's desk. I'd get my money from my account, then go to get some of those prepaid credit cards I'd seen on the racks at Walgreens. I'd never paid much attention to them before, so I didn't know what amounts they went up to. I'd buy however many I needed until they added up to enough money for a plane ticket. Instead of my usual outfit of jeans and whatever clean t shirt I grabbed, I wore my black pants and a white shirt with buttons. I strode into the bank like it was totally normal for me to go in alone. At the side counter, I picked up a withdrawal slip and filled it out like I always did when I was with my parents, except I was writing down a much bigger number than I ever had. While I waited my turn in line, I told myself to quit fidgeting. I'd look nervous if I played with the corner of the withdrawal slip or fiddled with my necklace. Forcing myself to stand still with my hands at my sides made me look like a mannequin. I took a deep breath and imagined the vibration of Blue 55's song playing against my hands. Finally, the customer ahead of me finished whatever he was doing. I stepped up to the counter and handed the teller my withdrawal slip. I tried to look taller as she looked from the paper to me. She said something to me, and I guessed it was about an ID, so I unfolded my birth certificate and slid it over to her. She said something else I didn't catch, so I picked up the chained up pen on the counter and motioned for her to write it down what she wanted. On the back of the blank deposit slip, she wrote, "Are your parents here? One of them has to sign to withdraw money from this kind of account." I forced myself not to cry after I read the note. This was money I'd earned from repair work and selling my radios. I should be able to take it out myself. I smiled, like this wasn't a problem at all, and wrote, "They're really busy with work and couldn't come. I'll have them sign it and come back later." After reading that, the teller shook her head and added, "No, I mean, they have to be here to show an ID and sign their name." I shoved the withdrawal slip back and birth certificate into my backpack, then wrote on the note, "Oh, right, I forgot. We'll come back later. Thanks." On my way out, I smiled and waved at her, then signed something that would get me in serious trouble if anyone nearby knew sign language. Now what? The whole point of parting with my radios was to have money to find Blue 55, and I couldn't touch it. Even if I asked my parents to withdraw some money for a radio or some parts, they would never believe I needed that much. When they noticed my missing radios, I told them I wanted to save up to buy more that needed fixing, since I like repairing them. It was a little true, since I did plan to buy more radios when I had enough money, but right then, the whale was more important. I got on my bike outside the bank, but didn't turn toward home. I needed to talk to someone who understood me. Grandma took her time answering the door, then gave me a hug and sat in a rocking chair by the window. For a while, I sat there looking out the window with her, staring at whatever she was always staring at. Nothing but trees and a parking lot, as far as I could tell. Even though Grandma wasn't looking at me, I picked up my hands and poured out everything I'd been holding onto. All that I tried to do and failed at. I told her about Blue 55, the song I'd created, the trip I'd planned, the radios I sold, and the money in the bank that I couldn't touch. Maybe it was so easy to let all that out because Grandma wasn't watching anyway, or because she'd understand how I felt. Maybe it was some of both. But she should know that I needed her to see me, that there was a reason I went there to tell her all this. If she just looked my way, she'd see the pain on my face. I didn't expect her to fix it. she could just tell me she was sorry it happened. I'd feel better just knowing someone understood that disappointment and let me know that I'd be okay. Instead, it was like I wasn't even there. And you know what else isn't fair? I added, when she kept staring out the window. You're not the only one who misses Grandpa. We can't all sit around being sad about him. Mom and Dad have to work, and Tristan and I have to go to school. My hands finally dropped to my lap. I didn't know how to express the ache of getting so close to the whale and then missing him, as if he dove below the surface just as my fingers brushed the skin of his back. Maybe Grandma knew a sign for that kind of pain, but I didn't. It wasn't like the sign for hurt I used for a scraped knee or a headache, and it wasn't the twist at the heart that shows grief. Losing someone I'd never met wasn't the same as losing Grandpa. The closest thing would be to touch to the heart, like something piercing it. But that could also mean something that's touching or moving in a good way because it's so beautiful. Grandma turned to me and signed. What part of Alaska? It took me a moment to realize she'd asked me a question. I didn't think she'd been I didn't think she'd been paying attention at all. Oh, it's I held up my hand to represent the state of Alaska, then pointed at a spot along the southern coast, a little town called Appleton. Not that it mattered anymore. Hopefully, she saw enough to understand that I wasn't going. An ache crept into my stomach at the thought of explaining it again. The night before, Mom came to my room to talk to me again about Blue 55. We avoided the subject since the dinner conversation that went so horribly wrong, and she was hoping to help me feel better. It didn't work. Plus, she corrected me when I signed that I missed the whale, which annoyed me even more. I signed it with a touch to the chin, the miss sign for when someone you care about is gone. It didn't feel like the wrong sign. Even though I'd never met Blue 55, I did miss him. Mom showed me that the sign for miss I'd meant was the one with an open hand closing onto a fist in front of the face, kind of like you're trying to catch a fly. The sign for something you tried to catch and couldn't, like when Blue 55 slipped away from Andy before she could tag him. Yes, I was going to miss out on seeing Blue 55, but that wasn't what I meant. The miss sign I'd used was also like the sign for disappointed, and I never understood why. Now it made sense. The meanings weren't so far apart. Someone you want to be with is far away, or something you wish for isn't going to come true. I know where that is. Grandma signed, pulling me back to our conversation. What? Appleton? How? Some cruise ships stop there. I remember from when Grandpa and I were planning one. Grandma and Grandpa went on cruises sometimes, but I didn't remember one to Alaska. When did you go? Well, we were thinking about it for our anniversary next year. I hadn't known they were planning an anniversary cruise. They almost made it to 50 years. Grandpa always wanted to touch a glacier. Grandma didn't turn back to the window but kept looking right at me. She hadn't done that for a long time. I didn't know what to say to her about that cruise. I'd bring it up to Mom, not because it would change her mind about going to Alaska soon. She'd made it clear that that was ridiculous. But I'd try to convince her that we had to go someday, not someday, as in some imaginary time that would never come, but for real. I'd get to tour the sanctuary. Blue 55 wouldn't be there, but I'd see the place where he'd heard my song. And we'd find a glacier to touch for Grandpa. Let's go, Grandma signed. At first, I thought she was thinking the same thing I was, that we could talk to my parents about planning a family trip. But Grandma didn't add someday. Her chair wasn't rocking anymore. She leaned toward me, hands on the armrests of the chair. You mean, I couldn't finish the sentence, too afraid to hope for what she was suggesting. Even if I understood her correctly, I didn't see how it would work. Mom had already said that we weren't going. It looked like Grandma had a different idea swirling in her head, though. So, what do you think? She asked. I shook my head and laughed, still not believing it. Like Andy said, Alaska's really far away, and people need time to plan a trip like that. But Grandma was one of those people who jumped into things, like she did that day on the beach with the sei whale. She didn't look away, and she didn't look like she was kidding. Maybe I wouldn't have to miss out on meeting Blue 55. It would be, for just a short time, a glimpse of him after such a long trip, but I'd have to hold I'd have that to hold on to, and then I wouldn't miss him so much. I squeezed Grandma's hand, then answered, I think it's time to get to sea.